Good morning, this is Dr. Turner for Fundamental Mathematics A. Today we're going to be talking about 2.3, which is looking at simplifying fractions. This does tie into the previous two sections, 2.1 and 2.2. There may be instances where you're going through 2.1, 2.2, and you need to simplify a fraction once you either add, subtract, multiply, or divide. In the assignment specifically for 2.1, 2.2, I didn't include those types of examples. But just be aware that it is possible to come across those if you're looking at a standardized test, etc. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, the idea of simplifying fractions comes from the idea of equivalent fractions. If you imagine a fraction being a part of something, then how many pieces you break it into represents the type of fraction that it is. So say I have a rectangle here, okay, and I take that same rectangle, bear with me here, a couple times, and I decide to cut this rectangle into pieces, right? So let's say at first I cut it in half. And then I cut the second rectangle into quarters. And the third rectangle I cut into eighths. Now, just looking at these rectangles stacked on top of each other, you should be able to visually see that if I have, let's say, 1/2 up here on the top, and I'll highlight that here in a second. If I have 1/2, that's the same as having 2/4. It represents the same amount of space. It's the same as having 4/8. So that's the idea behind simplifying fractions. If I were to write each of these as a fraction, 1/2 is the same as 2/4, is the same as 4/8. To convert fractions, or to simplify them more specifically, the idea is we're looking for a common factor in the numerator and the denominator. So we want to be able to divide something out of both. Now, if it's a larger fraction, sometimes we might have to do that more than once, but you keep simplifying until you can't simplify anymore. So, for instance, if I ask you to simplify 4/6, start out with something easy. Both of these are multiples of 2. That means I can simplify it by dividing top and bottom by 2 to get 2/3. And that would be a simplified fraction. If I have 3/9, both are multiples of 3. So I can divide both by 3 rather, which gives me 1/3. Etc., etc., etc. Now, as I mentioned, sometimes they'll be a little bit trickier. So let's say I have something like 8/32. Now, here I might just see, they're even. So I know I can divide by 2, right? Divide by 2, that would give me 4/16. But then I might notice again, hey, these are still even. So I could again divide by 2, which would give me 2/8. And once more, I would see, hey, these are still both even, so I could divide by 2 again to get 1/4, and that would be my simplified fraction. Now, when you're looking at common factors, to make it easiest on yourself, what you want to do is try to find the greatest common factor. So for instance, the same problem, if I recognized that I could divide top and bottom by 8, then that would give me 1/4 right away. So that way I would get it in one step instead of having to do it in 3 steps. There's no problem in having to take more than one step, but just know that if you simplify it, and you can still simplify it, you need to. Most tests, if you're looking at a question like this and you don't put it in the most simplified form, then it'll just mark it automatically wrong. So be careful with that. Let's do a couple more. Number 4, let's say we have 14/45. 14/35. Both of these are multiples of 7. So 14 divided by 7 gives me 2. 35 divided by 7 gives me 5. My answer is 2/5. 5, say 21/27. These are both multiples of 3. which reduces to 7/9. Now, typically on a test, like a standardized test, what they're going to do is they're going to say simplify if possible. So be careful. There may be instances where you can't simplify the fraction depending on what the question says. For my assignment, you're going to be able to simplify all of these, but on a standardized test, just be aware, sometimes they'll throw that in, simplify, parentheses, if possible. That's it for today, guys. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Otherwise, have a good day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.